to do. It's a shaming record of how we've handled this, and it comes back to a theme, Kate and Callum, I've talked about a number of times. Who speaks for blue-collar workers in Britain anymore? You know, the Tories don't, the Lib Dems certainly don't, and Labour, which used to, is now a party of the metropolitan white-collar middle class. Who speaks for ordinary, hard-working blue-collar workers who have basically been shafted in the steel industry by successive...
Andrew Neil just dragged Keir Starmer into the political woodshed, and trust me, there were no tea and biscuits waiting. Starmer made a decision so baffling, it felt like the fever dream of a rogue AI gone haywire. Then came Neil, swooping in with all the grace of a laser-guided fact missile. This wasn't an interview, it was a clinical, live broadcast academic ambush. Starmer tried to defend himself, but ended up looking like a man desperately trying to defuse a bomb with salad tongs blindfolded. Buckle up. This takedown isn't just brutal, it's beautifully, devastatingly surgical.
Solar panel farm of any scale in Britain now that has anything that isn't made in China. They haven't done wind turbines so much until recently, but they're now making so many wind turbines that they've got more than they need for their own domestic purposes, so they are now about to dump them into countries like Britain.
Before we dive in, smash that like button and hit subscribe, because trust me, you do not want to miss this. Keir Starmer just dropped another political bombshell, and not the good kind. His latest decision, let's just say it's one more head-scratcher in a growing highlight reel of missteps that has the entire political world buzzing, and not in a flattering way. This isn't just another blip, it's a full-blown blunder from a man who's quickly turning political leadership into performance art, and not the good kind. Starmer's looking less like a seasoned leader and more like an intern playing policy roulette with a blindfold and a dartboard. And this move? Oh, we'll get to that, but just know it's messy, real messy. Another miscalculated step from a Labour Party leader who's been stumbling through the political wilderness like a lost puppy, waiting for anyone to toss him a bone. But here's where it gets truly juicy. Enter Andrew Neil, the man, the myth, the political wrecking ball in human form. And today, he decided enough was enough. He didn't just critique Starmer, he went full demolition mode, tearing through his already shaky standing like a wrecking crew in prime time.
The door is open. Come in. Make us your home again. Working together, I believe we can do great things for our country. I believe we can be a force for good. And that starts today.
There's been almost no debate about it. The net zero rules, which are probably the most far-reaching rules any parliament has ever enforced in Britain, passed without debate. There was no examination of it. They never went into committee to go through them. There was no cost put on them either. So yes, of course, heavy industries will go to lower cost territories. I mean, even China now, which has become the great manufacturing center of the world, a lot of its manufacturing industry is now moving out of China because China's too expensive to do.
Now, we all know Andrew Neil's reputation, and no, it's not just the sharp suits or the razor-edged grooming. Neil's real weapon, that terrifying ability to dismantle political figures with surgical precision, the kind that makes actual surgeons look like they're fumbling with safety scissors in a sandbox. For years, Neil has been the political hitman with a camera crew, the guy who doesn't just take names, he takes careers. He's not here to entertain, he's here to expose. While other interviewers lob softballs, Neil shows up with a verbal scalpel and no anesthesia. He doesn't ask questions. He hunts for cracks, peels back the layers of polished nonsense politicians love to hide behind, and exposes the chaos underneath raw, unfiltered, and gloriously humiliating. Watching him work, it's not just journalism, it's art.
Should we be, I mean, Andrew, I suppose that there are two questions from that. The first is the answer to the question you pose, reform? And I'd love to get your take on that. But I suppose more broadly on what's happened in Scunthorpe, should we now be concerned about other industries where we also see similar patterns? You know, the water industry we see failing, and there are big questions about what happens next. Should we be worried about this happening again and the government having to step in?
But the water industry, which is pretty much a basket case, at least Thames Water is, that's failing for different reasons. That's a matter of the total failure of regulation in a privatised
So when Starmer made his latest boneheaded move, you better believe Andrew Neil didn't waste a second. He reached for his sharpest verbal scalpel and got to work. The moment Starmer opened his mouth, trying to explain what he thought was a game-changing masterstroke, Neil locked in like a demolition expert about to bring down an unstable building. Calm, calculated, ruthless. But this wasn't just about poking holes in Starmer's logic, oh no. This was about disassembling his entire political persona with just a few surgical jabs. No wasted motion, no mercy. This wasn't some polite sit-down chat. It was a televised showdown. And in that ring, there was only one heavyweight Andrew Neil, the undefeated champion of political takedowns, delivering yet another masterclass in obliteration.
What is more important? The security of the nation, proper, well-paid, unionized, blue-collar jobs, or a green agenda that suits Mr. Ed Miliband and his acolytes. It's simply been a matter of priorities, which the Tories have gone along with too. They're as complicit as anybody in this, which is why they don't make much about it at the moment. And I hope in a way it's a wake-up call, Kate, on two fronts. A wake-up call on giving the green agenda a priority.
In true Andrew Neil fashion, there was zero chance Starmer was going to dance his way around the issue. Not on Neil's watch. From the jump, Neil made one thing crystal clear. He was there to rip through the fog of political doublespeak and show the world exactly how paper-thin Starmer's leadership really is. And guess what? Starmer did not disappoint, at least. Not if you were expecting a train wreck. His answers, as hollow as his campaign promises. And Neil, he didn't even blink. He pounced, wasting no time in highlighting just how painfully out of touch Starmer truly is. With the cold precision of a veteran commentator on a mission, Neil went straight for the jugular, laying bare Starmer's glaring lack of direction, his whiplash-inducing flip-flops, and his spectacular failure to steer the Labour Party anywhere beyond the political graveyard of lost causes.
The bigger problem has been that it isn't just steel. It is industries that Westminster never talks about, knows nothing about. Chemicals, potash, aluminium, all our heavy industries have suffered. We have presided over the deindustrialization.
What made this entire exchange so deeply satisfying wasn't just Andrew Neil's masterful dissection of Starmer's failures, though that was a spectacle in itself. No, the real kicker was Starmer's sheer audacity, the way he kept trying to spin his string of political disasters as bold, progressive victories. Neil wasn't buying it, not for a second. With razor-sharp wit and an eye roll so powerful it might have cracked the camera lens, Neil made it painfully clear. Starmer isn't out here making tough choices for the country, he's just busy pandering to headlines and chasing approval from whichever crowd claps the loudest. And then came the spin. Oh, the unbelievable spin. Starmer tried to dress up his so-called radical reforms like they were visionary leadership, but Neil, with his relentless logic and that trademark smirk, stripped away the polish and exposed the shaky foundation beneath, and it was glorious to watch.
Labour, Conservative, SNP, Lib Dem, they're the people who lumbered it with the highest industrial energy costs in the world. 5 times America, 7 times China's, 50% more than France, 60% more than Germany. They ran it into the ground. It couldn't compete with these.
If there's one thing Keir Starmer excels at, it's being a walking contradiction, the kind that makes you genuinely wonder if he even knows what he believes anymore. He's like a bad reality show contestant trying to play both alliances, flip-flopping with every confessional, but instead of winning the game, he's losing the audience fast. The man who once billed himself as Labour's great unifier has somehow crafted a political identity so muddled, so blurred, that even his most loyal supporters are left squinting at the screen, asking, wait, what does he actually stand for? One moment, he's out there shaking hands, promising sweeping reforms and painting himself as the fearless champion of the working class. The next, he's behind closed doors, cozying up to corporate interests and making compromises so generous they'd make a centrist blush and a conservative raise an eyebrow in admiration. Starmer isn't just straddling the line, he's stumbling all over it. And in doing so, he's proving that trying to be everything to everyone only guarantees you end up meaning nothing to anyone.
By narrow interest. It will never again lose sight of its purpose or its morals, and it will never again be brought to its knees by racism or bigotry. If you don't like that, if you don't like the changes that we've made, I say the door is open And you...
What exactly is Keir Starmer? You've got a man who talks a big left-wing game, but the moment things get even slightly uncomfortable, he's already backing off. And let's not forget how fast he's willing to toss the working class under the bus the second it becomes politically inconvenient. You watch him stumble from one half-baked decision to another, desperately trying to appease centrists while still pretending to be progressive. But every flip-flop, every backtrack chips away at his credibility. And when he does try to be bold, he immediately recoils like someone who touched a hot stove and swore off courage for life. The only thing consistent about Keir Starmer is his uncanny ability to fail spectacularly when it matters most. It's like he's running in circles, trying to be everything to everyone without realizing that real leadership isn't about appeasing every voice in the room. It's about conviction. It's about decisiveness. And right now, Starmer has neither.
Because of our energy policies, we have a green agenda espoused by the metropolitan bourgeoisie has taken precedence over the interests of blue-collar workers who work in these industries. And, you know, the company, British Steel, it had to be taken into state ownership to be nationalised. I've got no doubt about that. There was no alternative. But that doesn't solve the problem. It doesn't solve the problem.
And here's the thing the Labour Party is watching. Every member, every strategist, every supporter is waiting for Keir Starmer to finally take a stand, to stop wavering, to make the tough defining decisions that separate leaders from placeholders. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage is practically kicked back in his armchair, watching the train wreck unfold in real time and licking his lips at the opening. Because while Starmer is still stuck in an identity crisis, trying to figure out what he might stand for, Farage already knows exactly where he stands. And love him or hate him, he's got the guts to back it up with policies that at the very least are consistent. It's not about agreeing with Farage, it's about the fact that he's decisive. And in a political landscape where Starmer's indecision is devouring his credibility, Farage's clarity, however controversial, starts to look like a golden beacon in the fog. That's the brutal truth. When one side stumbles and stammers, even the opposition's certainties start looking like strength.
And I don't quite understand why they left it till the last minute. But it's on a par with the British government, and I don't just mean this government, I mean previous Conservative governments too, on their handling of steel. You know, we're nervous that the Chinese control this steel mill and what damage they do. We do not need the Chinese to do damage to our steel industry. We're perfectly capable of doing massive damage to it ourselves, as we have done over the years.
So while Starmer keeps spinning his wheels, desperately trying to balance a political ideology that barely even makes sense, Farage is out there doing what actually works, winning hearts and minds through one simple tactic: consistency. Sure, he ruffles feathers, but he owns it. And let's be real, who needs moderation when you've got clarity, right? And Starmer, he's got no answer to that. In the end, it won't be some major scandal or policy disaster that brings him down. It'll be his refusal to commit to anything at all. That's the real killer. He's not just fumbling, he's actively handing his opponents the win on a silver platter. Bravo, because right now the Labour Party under Starmer isn't a runaway train that would at least imply direction. No, this is more like a bouncy castle of broken promises and confused leadership, deflating in real time while everyone inside argues over which way is out. One minute, he's throwing red meat to the progressive wing, promising radical reform, fairness, and sweeping change. The next, he's bowing to the centrist altar, offering up policies so watered down they barely register as ideas. You could drink them and not even taste a thing. It's not strategy, it's not leadership, it's not even survival. It's political self-sabotage dressed up as moderation.
I mean, the hypocrisy of these MPs as they made a big deal of going to work on a Saturday in the House of Commons, as if no one else has ever worked on a Saturday in the United Kingdom, and to save this industry. These are the people who destroyed the industry.
The constant flip-flopping is nothing short of staggering. Starmer wants to be the face of change, the beacon for a new Labour, but every time he tries to make a bold move, he finds himself stepping right back into the same swamp of middle-of-the-road nonsense the party's been stuck in for years. The Labour base, the very people who voted for change, are now stuck staring at a leader who can't even figure out if he's supposed to be a champion for the people. Or just another puppet dancing to the establishment's tune? He talks a big game about radical policy shifts, about shaking things up, and then, in his next breath, he settles for the same tired compromises that do nothing but prop up the status quo. The result? Starmer's caught in a tug of war, with every faction pulling him in a different direction, while not a single soul, not even Starmer himself, knows which side he's on. It's so painfully obvious at this point. Starmer is struggling to find a coherent message, and every flip-flop just makes the struggle more glaring.
To stop China from sabotaging UK industry after that government intervention we were just talking about, the emergency bill passed on Saturday. Andrew, I mean, there are some big questions about why the government has been so determined to rush through this emergency legislation to save these two blast furnaces. We heard from our industry correspondent earlier on the programme who said, you know, the Chinese company had indicated it would shut these blast furnaces down at around this time, over 12 months ago. What do you make of this?
Well, they were very slow to act. It was clear the way things were going. If these furnaces do go out, then there will never be steelmaking, virgin steelmaking.
It's almost like the Labour Party has forgotten what it's supposed to stand for. Once a political force with a clear vision for social justice and economic equality, now it's just a confused mess, desperately trying to appease everyone from union leaders to corporate elites. And that's the problem at the heart of it. This isn't just a political identity crisis, it's a complete breakdown. Starmer's too busy trying to keep everyone happy, and guess what? He ends up making everyone unhappy, and at the end of the day, all he's left with is a tangled web of contradictions and confusion. Starmer's playing political chess, but not only is he missing the key moves, he's playing the wrong game entirely. And that's where Andrew Neil enters the picture. This man's reputation doesn't just precede him, it hangs in the air like a predator circling its prey. Neil doesn't waste time with soft questions or polite nudges. He goes straight for the jugular. Known for his unrelenting critiques, Neil doesn't just point out flaws, he drills through the facades, tearing apart the carefully constructed illusions politicians love to hide behind. And right now, Starmer's inability to lead has become a prime target. Neil wasted no time pointing out what we all already know, the gaping void at the heart of Starmer's political agenda. Starmer claims to be building bridges, but as Neil aptly put it, he's not building bridges, he's stacking a house of cards. And it's about to come crashing down.
£700,000 a day doesn't solve the problem that it's still got the most expensive energy costs in the world. Doesn't solve the problem that although there is a mine in Cumbria that could have been opened to produce coking coal, instead, in the genius of our energy policies, we are going to import coking coal from Japan on the other side of the world. And what possible planet could that be regarded as green?
Neil's sharp analysis didn't mince words. He tore apart Starmer's entire narrative, exposing the cold, hard truth. Starmer's leadership isn't about vision or unity. It's about appeasing every faction, while ignoring the need for a coherent, forward-thinking strategy. The problem for Starmer, as Neil pointed out, is simple. He's too busy trying to be everything to everyone. But the reality? True leadership doesn't come from sitting on the fence. It comes from taking a stand. Starmer's weakness is glaring his lack of commitment to any one side. He's constantly hedging his bets, trying to play both the progressive and conservative angles at once. The result? A political car crash, as Neil so aptly described it, where Starmer's tactical play for neutrality only leaves Labour in a state of disarray.
When any changes we make are infinitesimal in the overall global struggle to get carbon emissions down, and secondly, that we've got to stop China coming in to critical infrastructure and giving them positions where they can hold.
Neil didn't just critique Starmer's political tactics, he exposed the fundamental lack of direction that has been the hallmark of Labour under Starmer's reign. While Starmer was busy playing the great appeaser, Neil made it crystal clear that his half-hearted approach was slowly but surely ripping the party apart from the inside. Starmer's rhetoric about unity and progress was hollow, as Neil pointed out. Labour has become a divided party with no clear vision, and it's only a matter of time before Starmer's fragile house of cards comes crashing down under the weight of its own contradictions. The sharp, biting tone of Neil's commentary left no room for doubt. Starmer is out of his depth. While he desperately tries to pretend he's leading, all he's really doing is dancing around the real issues, unwilling to make the tough calls that true leadership demands. This wasn't just a critique of Starmer's leadership, it was a public exposure of a man with so much potential, wasting it on empty promises, watered down compromises, promises and a refusal to take a stand on anything that matters. These wishy-washy moves don't serve anyone, least of all the working-class voters Labour once championed.
As the economy becomes more sophisticated, of course, the share of heavy industry in your GDP comes down. That's happened everywhere, from America, even Germany, which is a bigger manufacturing base than most advanced economies. That happens everywhere. But you don't have to hasten the process by making it uneconomic to run any heavy industry.
At the end of the day, Andrew Neil has proven once again that he's the no-nonsense commentator who's not afraid to cut through the fluff and call it like it is. His dissection of Starmer's leadership wasn't just about pointing out the flaws, it was about exposing the complete lack of substance at the heart of Starmer's entire political strategy. If Starmer doesn't start leading and stops basing his whole career on vague promises, his future in politics might end up being the most boring chapter in a history textbook. Old, irrelevant, and heading straight for the shelf. Starmer's window of opportunity is closing fast, and his mangled political ideals can't keep up. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more breakdowns, real talk, and political analysis you won't hear anywhere else.